like to talk to you today about cleansing the mind to cleanse the world. If we look at meditation, the final state of meditation is to try and reach a state of enlightenment. And it's the highest thing we can actually aspire to. But it's something very, very few people ever reach. Most of us somewhere along the journey, along the way to do that. There's a saying that knowledge is structured in consciousness. And whatever the state of your consciousness will determine your knowledge, rather than the other way around, that your knowledge actually determines your state of consciousness. So we look at the world today. The major challenges facing humanity are global in nature. Climate change, ever-decreasing biodiversity, full use of the fresh water on the planet, and obviously underpinning all them, overpopulation. So unless we have a world which is basically peaceful, we'll never get the levels of trust, cooperation or inclusiveness necessary to solve those problems. Therefore, for many of us, peace is a prerequisite for the survival of society as we know it in the 21st century. Now that's a statement which is structured in consciousness. Now, how does that relate back to us as individuals, and how does it relate back to us through meditation? So, if we look at meditation, and we're meditating, the idea of meditation really is to free us of attachment. And that's attachment to particularly afflictive emotions. So what happens as we meditate, in the process of the meditation, we start to become less attached. And that gives us a cleaner mind. We start to cleanse the mind. As we cleanse the mind, that then gives us the ability to be able to see things more clearly. It's said that when you're filled with rage, you're filled with anger, 90% of what you're perceiving is not real. Therefore, the process of meditation and cleansing purifies the mind so that we see it in more of a detached and pure mode. Now, if we can do that, now we're actually starting to change the structure of our consciousness. And with it, the knowledge we perceive will be different. And as the knowledge we perceive is different, so will the course of action which we take. So through your daily practice of meditation, that cleansing of the mind will go towards restructuring your consciousness, which then means you'll be taking the actions to help cleanse the world. I had a conversation at lunch today with a good friend of mine. He works for one of the biggest fund managers in the world, sort of analysing what stocks they should take. And he's very, very big on ESG, in other words, ethical investment. And he was just describing to me how the energy companies in Australia are now getting all the super or the pension funds withdrawing their money from them on ethical investment lines because they invest in coal-fired power stations, and this is actually affecting the stock price and it's making them to now start to pivot and rethink their strategy towards more ethical investments such as wind and solar for their electricity generation. This is just one example of how, again, our consciousness, or the structure of our consciousness, or the group, if you like, structure of consciousness, changes the knowledge in which we invest. I think this point, which I've just made on the ethical investments, really important because what it does, it shows the relationship between our actions and outcomes. So the more we can cleanse our mind, the more likely we are to make ethical investments. The more likely we are to focus on corruption in areas where we think it's important. We're more likely to try and hold our leaders accountable to be creating a better, more safe world. Therefore, as we look at this concept that knowledge is structured in consciousness, it's incredibly important for all of us with our daily meditation practice to keep meditating because that cleanses our minds. Now, get a better structure of our consciousness, which will then inform our knowledge, which in turn informs our actions around really creating a better planet for us all to live, thrive and, more importantly, survive in.